So yes, I'm very interested in this workshop because I'm responsible for medical information here at the EMA, and so I'm also responsible for the name review group, for the quality review of document, and also for the interaction with patient, consumer, and healthcare professionals. So it makes the whole workshop really very, very close to our day-to-day work. And what do we take from this workshop? What we realize is that medication error is a global issue on patient safety. And we speak about products, we speak about systems and environment, and we speak about people. So it's extremely complex. And we have a lot of different actors operating in this very different kind of worlds in a way. At European level, at national level, at local level, at individual level. So we need to look at all of these different aspects. And as Oliver said, it is a challenge, but it is also an opening for opportunities for collaboration and synergies. And I think that's what we need to look at now. What do we take back home from this workshop? And what kind of opportunity do we have? What can we put in place now? Personally, I've been extremely interested as well in this proactive risk assessment of product design, which was presented by industry and was also mentioned by the FDA. And maybe there is something we need to look at here for us regulators together with industry. Maybe we need to look at this issue a bit earlier rather than at the time of the risk management plan during the evaluation of the product. Maybe we could try to look at that earlier, and maybe we could solve some of the problem earlier rather than to go up to the risk management and putting in place risk management minimization measures. Maybe this could be solved earlier. So that's something I would like to open now with industry and with the quality review of document group. So I will now ask the panelists to give us also what are they going to take back home. And so I will start with Ángeles, if you wish.
Thank you, Isabelle. I mean, I think that from a doctor perspective, this workshop, I have learned a lot, but probably my key message to bring back home to my department is that medication error, although it has to be defined, we all know what we are talking about. As Isabelle said, it's a complex decision, and in order to improve and be proactive in this process that at the end cannot come of harm or less harm to our patients, we have to realize that there's a need to communicate, and there's a need, as I said, of a blame-free culture. Doctors, we need to really understand, we identify because we solve the medical errors, but we need to work together with all the bodies that are involved in this process in order to avoid the next one. And in order to avoid the next one is a long teaching and learning process. So this is my main message.
Thank you, Ángeles. So the next panelist is Peter, but as you have the last word, maybe Peter, I will not ask you to intervene at this point. Then we have David Cousins, please.
A number of speakers have talked about the linkages between this initiative on medication safety, medication errors, and the patient safety initiatives that you've heard this afternoon that EU are developing. My sort of important issues that I identify are the same sort of things I ask healthcare provider organizations when talking about patient safety. I say to them, so what is your action plan? What are you doing to minimize harms from medication errors? Do you have a clear plan as to reporting. So, you know, what reports are you collecting? Who's reporting to you? Who's not reporting to you? We've talked about doctors today. That's very interesting. What types of reports do you have? During this meeting, I've had some, for the first time ever, I've seen some data for EMA on medication error reports. That's very valuable information. I'd like all national authorities to publish every year information on medication errors that they've received, what's the reporting culture, and then how have they prioritized action on these errors? What are the main risks that they've identified from harms from medication errors, and what are they planning to do to minimize these risks? And then the following year you go back and you check, did they do, you know, have you actually done what you said you were going to do, and has that action actually had an impact or not? So I guess my main plea is I welcome the involvement of pharmacovigilance and medication errors, but I'd like very clear statements from national authorities and EMA as to what they're doing so that practitioners can clearly understand what's happening. One last thing in terms of the proactive approach we've heard today from the industry on risk assessing new products. I really welcome this, but I wouldn't want this sort of evaluation to be done in secret. I think that information needs to be provided. Certainly healthcare purchasers these days are very interested in purchasing for safety, and we want to hear about clinical trial information and SPCs, but we would love that information about risk assessment and easy access to risk management plans. In the service, we find it very difficult at the moment to get risk management plans. These should be public domain. So a lot more transparency on this topic, a lot of joint working with practitioners, patient safety, clinical governance. It's a long journey. You can feel a bit overwhelmed by it at times. So prioritizing what you're going to do year on year and delivering on your plan, even though it might be small steps and we would like you to do so much more, but you know, every year you can start improving and you know, learning from your experience. So I welcome you joining us on this journey. It's a long journey, but it's a worthwhile journey. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Agnieszka from the Commission, last word.
Yes, I think it's obvious that there are clear synergies between what we are doing on general patient safety and the work on medication errors. So I think we should at least regularly exchange information, if not going to more structured work together. I think that the imminent work of the Patient Safety Working Group on reporting and learning systems could be of interest also to you. Reporting and learning systems are a perfect tool not only to increase information, but also to increase patient safety culture. So we'll try to take it really in very broad sense. And the group is chaired by a member state, so I have to go back to the chair of the group, but I think it would be useful if Emma could be an observer or guest, permanent guest in this group. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Carol, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Would you like to say something, to give us some last words about that?
Sure. Just listening to what the last panelists have said, I totally agree. The earlier you look at this, the better. What we've learned here in the States is that you really have to address these issues early in the design stages. So we've been trying to get involved primarily at like the IND stage, pre-IND or end of phase 2, before people have actually finalized their product design. With respect to publishing, you know, every year about what our practices are. That's why we try to begin slowly with the guidance development. I do think it's a good idea to try and get consensus among the different countries. And it is a slow journey. I mean, we've been trying for 10 years to get some things published on some of the processes we've been doing here and to increase public awareness and to increase learning. But it's difficult at times, and you often get pushback from industry on a lot of the initiatives. But you just have to keep charging forward and trying to do the best that you can to bring awareness to this issue, because these are preventable events. They're not like adverse events that are intrinsic to a drug product. These things can be totally avoided if we all put our heads together and think proactively. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. François, from the patients, some last words?
Two things. First, coming from the rare diseases and orphan drugs, where maybe the links and the working relations between patients, healthcare professionals, and industry are closer than in common diseases, and where the rule is that patients are consulted early by the marketing authorization applicants on the delivery of the medicine, the administration, because sometimes and very often they are very complex. I've seen the full benefit of this early consultation, and I'm using the term consultation on purpose. And I think this can only benefit the early identification of possible problems and ease the following processes. And also, speaking about engagement with patient organizations, I'd like to mention an initiative in 2012 from the French Drug Agency. They made a call for projects to patients and consumer organizations with funding and 38 organizations applied, and 9 were selected on projects to improve the information to patients, improve the behaviors, improve the knowledge and the know-how. And some are directly targeted at diminishing the medication errors. And I think that is a very good example of a member state engaging with patient organizations to minimize the risk. The second thing is what we talked a bit, but maybe not enough, on the attitudes, human errors, fair blame, risk of fear of reporting, etc. I would be curious if someone ever analyzes which medication errors go to the press or go to the court, and which don't go to the press, which don't go to court. Maybe one major difference is the attitude of the healthcare professionals or healthcare providers at large when something wrong happens. And there are two different attitudes. The closed attitude, where it's impossible to learn what really happened, nobody wants to tell you, and a more open attitude where the parents or the patient is invited at the table of the team who is analyzing what has gone wrong and how, and what can be done to avoid the next time. I think these very different attitudes can explain why sometimes the patients or the family can understand that it's human errors and there is no need to go to court or to go to press. And maybe that's one of the aspects that needs further discussion with all parties involved and professions involved.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to the pharmaceutical industry, Michael Richardson.
Thank you, Isabelle. I'd first like to just thank the EMA for putting this workshop together. I think it's very timely, and certainly for myself, and I think for a number of us here, didn't really appreciate the breadth and scope of all the processes and the issues that lead to medication errors. So it's been most informative and educational. Industry certainly has a role to play, and we need to continue doing that to the best of our capability. My colleague Laurent mentioned the FAMIR, the RMPs, the identification of areas where we can design out the risk. Another area of particular importance I was discussing with David earlier was we know that the medication errors that lead to harm are captured in databases such as AIRS and EudraVigilance, but it's the other it's the ones that don't lead to harm, which are not easily accessible across the multiple stakeholders. And so some transparency in finding ways to share that information, both from the ones we capture in industry and the ones that groups like the NHS capture, and how we can share that information. I think there are already initiatives in place to make the RMP, or certainly the important parts of the RMP, publicly available. The EMA have introduced this with the new legislation. And as David mentioned, certainly if doctors were aware of the work that's already gone on in identifying the risk, the potential risks, and what we are looking for in missing information, they would be better informed and alerted to the situation. One other point on the design analysis, the FAMIR, or the process, it's not only for design of devices or pens, but we bring it earlier into development because we know also from the scientific treatment modality, we identify these risks earlier on. And by using this analysis, we're able to go into a risk management plan that would identify, for example, when we know in immuno-oncology, if a patient starts having a side effect or what they perceive to be a side effect, it actually is often the pathway for treatment, and that they shouldn't stop their treatment. And so we were able to put in place a risk management plan by going out and speaking with healthcare providers and patients before they started their treatment, that in the event this happens, which it is probably going to happen because that was the pathophysiology of the disease and the treatment, that they should not stop treatment. They must go and see their doctor because the disease was going to worsen. This was in the case of melanoma. And then lastly, industry have come to realize that it isn't just treat as many patients as you can, but there's certainly a place for not only knowing, we went through the 4 R's of right dose, right patient, but it's also knowing which patients are not going to benefit from the medication, and that's as important as ensuring that that information gets out so that patients with different subtypes or enzyme systems who won't respond to the medication are also not going to receive it. And then I think lastly, we had a number of quotes here today, and David mentioned that true patient safety really only started sort of a couple of decades ago, but actually it goes right back to Hippocrates, the father of all physicians, that first, do no harm. Thank you.
Always good to come back to the principles. Then we have Ulva from the Irish Medicine Board, please.
Thank you very much, Isabelle. Now, I'd like to just briefly reflect on some of the key themes which have emerged. There's been a focus on communication and dialogue and cultivating mutual understanding of our different worlds. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the EMA for facilitating this discussion. I think today's workshop is an important first step in bringing together the various contributors to patient safety. And I know there's a commitment within this agency. You'll have seen that there were representatives right across the committees involved in this meeting to ensuring that we consider this at all steps in the life cycle of a medicine. And we welcome the efforts and the views expressed in this meeting around thinking about this very early in the product cycle, thinking about product design, but also acknowledging that issues of medication error can arise at any stage in the product cycle, because we're not talking just about product-related issues, but we're talking about a changing environment for the use of medicines. And we need to ensure that we fully appreciate the idea that we have an integrative approach to medication safety that recognises the added value of all the contributors in the process. One other aspect that was highlighted a number of times is that identifying risk is just the first step in the process. We need to very carefully develop risk minimization strategies with contributions from all of those, with the evidence evaluation skills, but also those who understand the delivery of healthcare, and particularly we need to understand the patient perspective. I think that's a real area that we can better utilise in the risk management process, the value of the empowered patient, and we need to continue to remember that. So just then to conclude, I think it's to thank again all of the contributors to the meeting, and to say that we're optimistic that we can deliver on some of the challenges, appreciating that there is a lot of work to be done, but that would be guided by the principles of public health prioritisation, scientific evidence, and the importance of transparency. So thank you very much, Isabelle.